Oh hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube and welcome back to the channel. Now I love winter in Cornwall. Most of the tourists have gone home and it feels very much like you have the place to yourself. The crisp cold air from the sea, the smell of charring wood burning, and of course all the fabulous Cornish Christmas menus are out. Today we're taking a trip to the Lost Gardens of Heligan, and if you're lucky enough to be able to find it, it's well worth a visit. So let's explore the gardens together and I'll show you why I love it here so much. Well, hello again, and it's my favourite time of year for some undisturbed Cornish exploring. I was actually only just here at Heligan in the Halloween half term, but it was a lot busier then than today. So how do you find a garden that's lost? How did it get lost? And how do you get to it? Stay tuned as I'll explain all in this video. Firstly, to find the gardens, you need to head to the beautiful fishing port of Mevagissey in southwest Cornwall, and then follow the signpost to the Lost Gardens of Heligan. So for something that's lost, it's surprisingly easy to find. Heligan is one of the most mysterious estates in England, lost to the brambles of time since the outbreak of World War I. This sleeping beauty was reawakened in 1990 to become Europe's largest garden restoration project. Today, Heligan's 200 acres are a paradise for the explorer, wildlife, plant lover and garden romantic. At the end of the 19th century, Heligan's 1,000 acres were at their zenith, but only a few years later, bramble and ivy were already drawing a green veil over this sleeping beauty. The outbreak of World War I was the start of the estate's demise, and its workforce went off to fight in the trenches, many sadly never to return. This was a story played out in many of the large estates throughout Britain's war period. There's so much to see and do here at the Lost Gardens of Heligan, and I think you could easily spend a couple of days here to explore the whole thing. It really is massive, from animals, wildlife to food and beautiful walks through the scenic gardens. It really does have it all, and an amazing farm shop as well if you're into local produce. If you're a local and you're lucky enough to live in Cornwall, then you can get a year's membership for just £30, which is fantastic, and that gives you unlimited access to the gardens for an entire year. Unlike many other estates, however, the gardens and land at Heligan were never sold or developed. In fact, it wasn't until the 1970s that Heligan House itself was eventually sold and split into private apartments. After decades of neglect, the devastating hurricane of 1990 should have consigned the now lost gardens to a footnote in history. Instead, events conspired and the romance of their decay took a hold on our imaginations. The discovery of a tiny room buried under fallen masonry in the corner of one of the walled gardens was to unlock the secret. A motto etched into the limestone walls in barely legible pencil still reads, "Don't come here to sleep or slumber," with the names of those who worked here signed under the date August 1914. Heligan was fired by a magnificent obsession to bring these once glorious gardens back to life in every sense, and to tell, for the first time, not tales of lords and ladies, but those ordinary people who had made these gardens great, before departing for the Great War. In 2013, the Imperial War Museum recognised Heligan's Thunderbox Room as a living memorial to the gardeners of Heligan. A plaque, a Cornish shovel and a World War I helmet now mark the spot. Heligan have now established a large working team with its own vision for the third decade. During the winter months, the gardens come alive at night time with the Heligan Night Garden, which runs from November through to January, where the gardens are lit up in the darker times of the day, and it's truly beautiful and a magical experience, so definitely one to try out. The award-winning garden restoration is already internationally acclaimed, but the lease now extends into well over 200 acres. Leaving the project far from complete. Heligan intend to remain a living and working example of the best of past practice, offering public access into the heart of the restoration. But how were the Lost Gardens found? The story goes that Tim Smith, his wife Candy and their young family had been living in London, and Tim had been in the music business and felt he needed a change. Tim's name is household since the founding of the Eden Project, which is just a few miles away from the Lost Gardens of Heligan, down the road in Boldava. near St Blaise. They travelled to Cornwall and became interested in rare breed farm animals, specifically pigs. But what goes down must come up, and there are some quite steep parts to the garden, so bring some good walking boots and be prepared for a bit of a hike. Especially if you're heading down to the jungle, which is right at the bottom of the gardens and down a very steep hill. But it's all good. I could do with some exercise today. And there's even a rope bridge you can cross through the jungle, which is rather hard whilst trying to film yourself. And rather high up as well. They moved nearby and were searching for some available land, so they contacted John Willis, who was a descendant of the Tremaine family who have been left with the land around the house. They went to the pub, and although John said he definitely didn't want pigs, when he learned of Tim's degree in archaeology, he told him he'd inherited a garden and didn't quite know where to start with it. It might just be one of the most serendipitous moments to happen over a pint. The day they met was just after the 1990 hurricane that had clipped the southwest. And when they arrived at Heligan, they had to slice their way through with machetes. They resolved to restore Heligan to its original glory in what the Times would later call the garden restoration of the century. Heligan even has its own jungle, which is where we are right now. It's a really cool place to visit, right at the bottom of the gardens. And let's not forget the food as well. There's some fabulous food here at Heligan, and there's lots of different eateries celebrating the local produce around Cornwall, and of course, the vegetables and herbs grown in the gardens here. I'm all for eating locally, and there's many options at Heligan during your visit. Whether you're looking to experience some traditional Cornish fare or sample the heritage fruit and vegetables grown on site. The Heligan Kitchen, Steward's House and seasonal outlets can provide the perfect treat for you, and you can also visit some of these without a garden pass, such as Heligan Kitchen, Garden Bites Takeaway, Heligan Shop and Plant Centre. You can't leave Heligan without visiting the excellent shops and Lob's Farm Shop, and again you can visit these without needing to visit the gardens. Selling the very best of Cornish and West Country meats and produce, including their own home-reared grass-fed beef and lamb and much, much more. Excellent for some gift ideas or just something for your kitchen. The farm shop is supplied by produce from Heligan's 3 farms, which are adjacent to the shop and are run by the 3 Lob brothers. Anything they don't produce themselves is sourced from other local meat producers. Heligan also grow a variety of seasonal vegetables, but again, if they don't produce it themselves, they source it as locally as possible. As you're near some magnificent Cornish coastlines, harbours and fishing villages whilst visiting Heligan, I always like to end my trip by taking a little stroll down to the sea. Today we're at one of my favourite harbours on the south coast, Charlestown, which is about 20 minutes drive from Heligan. Nice and quiet today as we're out of season, but still a few people around. Once a thriving working port constructed to export copper and china clay, Charlestown's principal industry is now as a film set and to welcome visitors who want to follow in the footsteps of sailors from the past. Beautifully preserved, the pretty pastel fishermen's cottages line the harbour, with a nice range of places to eat, drink and shop dotted around as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and learned something about the fabulous Lost Gardens of Heligan. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.